I'm going to hand over now to Kath Aiken from the UK and to talk about the Generation Equality Forum, the UN proposal and WHRC's response. So welcome, Kath.
Okay, I'm going to, this is our news report about WHRC and our actions with the UN recently. So CEDAW, CSW, NGO CSW, UNWomen, and the appropriation of feminism. CEDAW is the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. It was adopted by the UN in 1979 and was the culmination of more than 30 years' work by CSW, the UN Commission on the Status of Women. This is the principal global intergovernmental body for promoting women's rights and shaping sex equality standards. CEDAW is the document on which our Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights is based. CSW holds an annual 2-week gathering in New York, where representatives from UN member states meet to discuss progress in implementing the 1995 Beijing Declaration, among other things. During this fortnight, NGO CSW also takes place. This is a gathering of civilian NGOs with an apparent women's rights focus, which is supposed to work to ensure the voices of women's rights and feminist organizations are heard by CSW. UNWomen was set up in 2010 to support women's equality and freedom from discrimination as set out in CEDAW. It should be the primary instrument standing up for the rights of women and girls. UNWomen, along with Mexico and France, have organised the Generation Equality Forum, which should have ended last year. This is a series of meetings intended to renew commitments to advance women's rights 25 years after the Beijing platform. They created action coalitions to decide the new agenda, collaborate and find funding from companies, philanthropists, governments, civil society and UN agencies for the next 5 years. We should be able to look to UNWomen as the defender of our rights as set out in CEDAW, but sadly this is not the case, as we know firsthand from our own experience at NGO CSW this year. UNWomen has lost sight of its brief. Instead of defending our sex-based rights and working to eliminate sex discrimination, it has been redefining feminism, appropriating our language and destroying its meaning. Determined efforts by large funding bodies and NGOs to persuade the UN to replace the category of sex with gender identity are having an effect. Hundreds of millions of dollars have poured into UNWomen from groups representing moneyed male interests, including $100 million alone from Open Society foundations. UNWomen has responded to this by appropriating the language of feminism to declare a new feminism that includes worrying concepts such as bodily autonomy, adolescents' capacity to consent to sex, and the horrifying demand that all aspects of sex work be decriminalised. As a feminist far more knowledgeable than me said, this is not feminism, this is bullshit. So what did we do? Women volunteering for WHRC and other international women's rights organisations decided we should contact as many UN representatives as possible to warn them of the consequences of replacing sex and sex-based discrimination with gender identity, stereotyped roles which favour men and disadvantage women. We assumed the best intentions of UN representatives. Gender ideology is a wolf in sheep's clothing, presenting itself as inherently feminist and progressive while causing considerable harm to women and girls. It has progressed rapidly through UN agencies and national governments without debate or scrutiny. So many people, even those who should make it their business to understand the issues involved, are still unaware or perhaps unwilling to learn of the harms that gender ideology is causing. We pointed out that endorsing the idea that being a woman or man was not a material biological fact, but a metaphysical state based on stereotypes will do nothing to reduce the oppression of women. We warned that including this apparently neutral new language into national and international legal frameworks will not only disguise male violence against women, but will also dismantle any advances towards achieving substantive equality for women. We produced a letter and an infographic translated into several languages, provided some instructions, and encouraged our signatories to send it out. We also issued a press release and did some promotion on social media. You can find all these resources on our website. Other results. The Generation Equality Forum concluded with its global acceleration plan, in which the language of feminism is appropriated and redefined, and the new language dominates funding and state actions. Women and girls have been reduced to women in all their diversity, a new euphemism that includes trans-identified people, non-binary identified people, and sex workers. Bodily autonomy has been adopted as a new discourse that opens the door to all the industries that make profit from women and girls' bodies. UNWomen's remit to defend our rights has been effectively destroyed as large funding bodies representing these moneyed male interests demand that gender erases sex. Intersectionality has become the new in thing, and instead of referring to the intersection of different forms of discrimination, as mentioned in CEDAW, the new intersectionality simply means that males and their interests must now be included in every aspect of work to improve women's rights. The Global Acceleration Plan is a depressing, incoherent, and self-congratulatory document full of euphemisms and disguising language that attempts to hide its total lack of structural feminist analysis. It's like this, we think campaigns have an effect on their agencies and associated NGOs, and they're starting to pay attention. The ridiculous Affirmation of Feminist Principles was released shortly after our warning letter went out, which we think may be a direct response to our own declaration. The Global Acceleration Plan itself contains fewer references to red flag terms, such as sex work and children's rights, than we might have expected. We think sharing our messages is having an effect. We're enormously grateful to everyone who's taken part so far and have plans for more actions over the coming months. The last slide, what can we do? The UN and its agencies are funded through our taxes. Tax money paid by women all over the world is being used to erase our sex-based rights, our means to describe discrimination against us, and the language that defines our experiences. We believe these agencies must be held to account by those that fund them and by individuals. So-called feminist declarations, such as that published by the Women's Rights Caucus in 2020 and the recent Affirmation of Feminist Principles, instrumentalize the global south in order to set an agenda, for example, for sex work, which suggests it is a viable income alternative for poor women. Feminists know better than that and understand it is a structural system of exploitation wherever it happens, using mostly vulnerable women and girls. We oppose this instrumentalization and must act globally to make our governments in the global north accountable for the money that is spent to promote systems of exploitation. We know men are the main lobbyists for the total decriminalization or legalization of pimping, trafficking, and sex buying worldwide. The Global Acceleration Plan from Generation Equality refers to action coalitions, groups of states, NGOs, and corporations that will be involved in carrying out their key objectives. WHRC intends to contact all the states, NGOs, and corporations involved in these action coalitions to pass on our warning about the consequences of replacing sex with gender identity. We'll also contact UNWomen's top 20 government funders to ensure all have a full understanding of what it is they are funding and that they can see there are women like us who resist and are prepared to demand that they be publicly accountable for their actions. We're planning to produce a list of states, NGOs, and corporations involved in the action coalitions, along with example letters and suggested contacts. Any resources we create will be made available for your use. This week, we also launched a letter writing campaign asking women to send a complaint to the UN to let them know how gender ideology is harming women's rights. Anyone can complain. See our website for more details. Although taking on the might of the UN and national governments may seem like an insurmountable task, we believe it's still possible to make a difference. We know that letters signed by WHRC have been taken note of by officials at UNWomen because they've told us. There are 19,000 of us and growing all the time. We have power. If we speak up together, we can be heard.